There are some financial mistakes you can recover from pretty easily. You buy something you don't really need, realize it was a dumb purchase, and move on. But retirement is different. When you're still working, you usually have time to make the money back. You can pick up extra hours, change jobs, build your savings again, or simply wait for the next paycheck. Retirement doesn't always give you that luxury, and that's why one large financial mistake at 65 can follow you for the next 10, 15, or even 20 years. Today I want to talk about some of the biggest purchases retirees often regret. Now, before anybody misunderstands me, I'm not saying these things are automatically bad. If you've got plenty of money, your retirement is secure, your bills are covered, and buying one of these things isn't going to affect the life you've planned for yourself, then enjoy it. You've worked hard. You're allowed to spend your money. But there's a difference between buying something because you genuinely want it and buying something because you convinced yourself that retirement was supposed to look a certain way. I've made unnecessary purchases. My wife has too. I think most of us have. The problem isn't buying something you don't need. The problem is spending a huge portion of your retirement savings on something that seemed like a great idea at the time, only to realize years later that you can't easily get your money back. And that's where the trouble begins. So let's start with something almost everybody understands, a brand new vehicle. I've known people who would trade in their vehicle every year, not because the old one was broken, not because it couldn't get them where they needed to go. They simply wanted the newest model sitting in the driveway. And I understand the appeal. There's something satisfying about driving a brand new vehicle. Everything is clean. The seats don't have stains. The tires are fresh. There's that new car smell. But here's the part that isn't nearly as exciting. The moment you drive that vehicle away from the dealership, you've already lost money. And when you're retired, money doesn't come back as easily as it did when you were working. I spent decades around delivery trucks, so I've seen plenty of vehicles get beaten up over the years. And one thing I've learned is that a well-maintained older vehicle can still serve you extremely well. You don't necessarily need something brand new. You need something reliable. There's a big difference. I'd much rather drive an older vehicle that's completely paid off than have a beautiful new truck sitting in my driveway while I'm making a large monthly payment every month. Because retirement is about reducing financial pressure, not adding another bill to the pile. And that brings me to another purchase that can look like a dream at first. The giant retirement house. You spent 30 or 40 years working. Maybe you've always dreamed of having that huge house, 5 bedrooms, a giant kitchen, a huge yard, maybe even a pool. And when retirement finally arrives, you think, now's my chance. But here's something people don't always think about. You're not just buying a house. You're buying everything that comes with it. The property taxes, the insurance, the heating and cooling, the repairs, the roof, the plumbing, the yard, the cleaning, and eventually possibly somebody else's labor because your body can't keep up with all of it anymore. That beautiful house can become a full-time job. And there's something else that happens as we get older. Our needs change. The kids grow up, they move away. The grandchildren get older. And suddenly that 6-bedroom house you bought because you thought the family would always be around has 4 empty bedrooms. I know people who spent years maintaining rooms that nobody uses, and I understand why they did it. They wanted the family to have somewhere to come home to. They imagined Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas mornings, grandchildren running through the hallway. There's nothing wrong with wanting those memories. But you have to ask yourself an uncomfortable question. Are you buying this house for the life you're actually going to live, or for a life you're hoping your family will someday give you? That's an important distinction, because your children may love you deeply and still build lives somewhere else. They may move across the country. They may get married. They may buy their own homes. And suddenly you're left with a huge property that costs thousands of dollars every year simply to keep standing. And please be careful when it comes to financially tying yourself to your children's dreams. Co-signing a loan, helping purchase a property, backing a business venture. You may want nothing more than to help your kids succeed. But if things don't work out, that debt can come right back to you. And when you're retired, you don't necessarily have another 30 years of working ahead of you to fix the mistake. Sometimes loving your family means helping them. Sometimes it means saying no. And learning that difference can protect both your finances and your relationships. Now let's talk about something that isn't technically a purchase, but can have just as big an impact on your retirement. Social Security. There are people who regret claiming it too early. There are people who regret waiting. And there are people who made their decision based entirely on what their neighbor, brother, friend, or co-worker told them to do. That's dangerous. Your retirement isn't identical to anybody else's. Your health is different. Your savings are different. Your family circumstances are different. Your income is different. Your plans are different. So don't automatically copy somebody else's decision just because it worked for them. I've known people who chose to claim early because they wanted to enjoy the money while they were still healthy enough to do the things they loved. And honestly, I understand that. What's the point of building a retirement plan that looks perfect on paper if you're miserable living it? At the same time, someone else may have enough savings to wait longer and increase their future benefit. There's no magic answer that works for everyone. You have to look at your own situation. And if you're unsure, get qualified financial guidance rather than making a decision because somebody on the internet told you what they did. Now here's another one that catches people. Timeshares. They can sound wonderful when you're sitting in a beautiful resort listening to a salesperson explain the dream. You picture yourself coming back every year. You imagine family vacations. You think, we'll use this forever, and maybe you will. But what happens when your circumstances change? What happens when you don't travel as much? What happens when your health changes? What happens when the maintenance fees keep increasing? That's when something that once felt like an investment can start feeling like an obligation. I know people who've spent years paying for something they barely used, and getting out of some of these contracts can be incredibly difficult. There are exceptions, of course. Some people genuinely enjoy their timeshares. But before you sign anything, make absolutely sure you understand what you're buying, what you're paying every year, and how difficult it may be to get out. Because the vacation may be temporary, the bill may not be. And then we get into another area that worries me even more. Financial products people don't fully understand. Annuities, complicated insurance policies, investment products with layers of fees and restrictions. Things that sound incredibly sophisticated when somebody is explaining them to you, but that you couldn't explain yourself 5 minutes later. That's a warning sign. If you're putting a huge portion of your retirement savings into something, you should understand exactly what it does, how much it costs, what you can access, what happens if you change your mind, and what your family receives if you die. Because there's a strange kind of retirement poverty that people don't talk about. You can technically have a lot of money and still feel broke. You can be wealthy on paper while having very little cash available for the life you actually want to live. And that's a terrible position to find yourself in. You spent decades saving for freedom, only to discover that you can't comfortably use the money. And then there are the big toys, the RVs, the fifth wheels, the boats. This is where retirement dreams can get expensive very quickly. I've seen people imagine themselves traveling across the country after retirement. They picture waking up beside a lake, driving through the mountains, watching sunsets from the campsite, and there's nothing wrong with that dream. The problem comes when you spend $100,000 making that dream possible, before you've figured out whether you actually enjoy living it. Driving a massive RV isn't the same thing as driving a car. Parking one isn't the same thing either. Backing up a fifth wheel can be stressful. Maintenance can be expensive. Insurance costs money. Storage costs money. Fuel costs money. And even when you're not using it, it's still sitting there losing value. I've seen expensive RVs sit in driveways for months because the owners simply didn't use them as much as they imagined. And boats? Well, you've probably heard the old joke. BOAT stands for break out another 1,000. There's a reason that joke exists. If you're only going to use that boat a few times every summer, renting one may make far more sense than owning one. You get the experience without taking on all the responsibility. And that's really the point I'm trying to make. Retirement isn't about proving that you can finally afford the biggest house, the newest truck, the biggest RV, or the most expensive toy. Retirement is about freedom. It's about waking up without a boss telling you where you need to be. It's about having enough money to handle an unexpected repair without panicking. It's about being able to help your family when you genuinely want to. It's about having the freedom to say yes to something you enjoy and the freedom to say no when you don't. So before you make that huge purchase in retirement, stop for a minute. Don't just ask, can I afford the payment? Ask yourself something much more important. Can I afford everything this purchase is going to cost me for the next 10 or 20 years? Because the purchase price is only the beginning. And here's another question worth asking. If I change my mind next year, how difficult would it be to get my money back? That question alone might save you from a very expensive mistake. I'd really like to hear from you. What's the biggest purchase you ever regretted? Maybe it was something you bought yourself. Maybe it was something you bought for your family. Maybe it was a vehicle, a house, an RV, a boat, or something completely different. And if you're already retired, what purchase would you warn someone else against making? Share it below. Somebody reading your experience might avoid making the exact same mistake. And that's what these conversations are really about. Not telling people how to live, not judging anybody for the choices they've made, just sharing what we've learned before somebody else has to learn it the hard way. Take care of yourselves. Protect your money. Protect your time. And most importantly, protect your peace. Because after you've spent a lifetime working for your future, you deserve to actually enjoy it. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of the people you love, and keep moving forward. Sometimes the best retirement isn't the one that looks impressive from the outside. It's the one that lets you sleep peacefully at night.